Nandhi, it's really nice having you here today.
Gratitude.
Yeah,
Gratitude. It's an honor to be here with you.
and actually, Nandhi, I had a whole list of questions I was going to ask you, but right at the last moment today, I sort of put them aside, and I would like to start this interview a whole lot differently, if you don't mind.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'd like to start it from silence.
Okay.
If you and I could just go into silence for about 30 seconds
Mm-hmm.
and just let it come out.
Okay.
Does that feel right?
Beautiful. And today is the new moon,
Cool.
so it's a sacred moment.
Okay, then you go ahead and start when you're ready.
Okay. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful to be here. It's beautiful uh, to align ourselves to the amazing blossom of humanity as in consciousness that is happening today in the form of each one of us, in the form of all the music there is, in the form of all the beautiful books there is, in the form of this age of information technology where consciousness can easily reach each other by awakening the intellect and to understand consciousness as freedom. The freedom to be beyond the mind, the freedom to think out of the box, and the freedom to actually be good human beings. So here we are. Gratitude.
One of the things that's coming to my mind right now is when we ask, who am I? I'm going to speak from my own experience. When I started asking, who am I went to India, to Pune, and got involved in Osho's community there. And it was pretty dynamic. It's really good for Western people because it shook us up, And I started asking, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? But then I started recognizing that the thing that was asking, who am I, was not going to be the thing that's there when I wake up. So the question became more of a practice other than looking for an answer. And it was a matter of getting past the questioner and getting back to the observation of this personality sitting there saying, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And now as I look upon this is the reason I wanted to start in silence, is so I could become present and be here with you in this moment, and let this sort of roll out and just sort of see what happens here, because that's the only thing that can happen if you stop and think about it.
True. No, that's an interesting observation, because the mind is going to have its waves of ups and downs, and then there is always the moment during the day that there is mighty awareness, and when we wake up, there is always going to be the moments when we wake up at a particular place where the mind leaves us. But if we can understand the mind as consciousness, or the bed of consciousness from where thought comes from, it is up to us to actually decide to climb up where we want to go, and from where we want each thought to spin our daily reality or our every thought.
Right. Yeah.
So the I am is a beautiful question, because ultimately it leads us to, am I infinity? Am I God? Am I states of joy, states of bliss. And within even that, there's a journey.
Right.
That's why after realization, most beings still sit down to meditate, because there is a journey that continues and continues and continues. And each thought arising from this mind becomes more and more potent in its ability to enhance the same level, enhance consciousness itself.
Yeah, I was reading some of the Declaration of Consciousness, and one of the parts of the Declaration I think is really important is the awakening of the feminine, and giving feminine energy, not just sort of token positions of power, but really power and influence in our world of decisions. I wrote a book a while back about beliefs, and I said two of the things that the powers that be, the dark forces or whatever you want to call them, the other side of what we're trying to do, the two things they didn't count on was women waking up and the internet, the free exchange of ideas past the filters of the corporate media. And I see us entering into a world where, looking at myself, I am seeing the value of finding that balance of feminine and masculine. And it's that, this is the strange part, and I sort of like look at it sometimes like riding a bike. When I first started riding a bicycle, I would start falling to the left, and my mind would say, pull the bike to the right. Then it would say, pull the bike to the left. But there was that magic moment when my body-mind took over, and balance became not something I was doing, but it was something that was happening within me, beyond my mind. And I feel that process happening between masculine and feminine now inside me.
It's a powerful observation. It is basically, that's what's actually happening to everyone on planet Earth, thanks to the age of information, thanks to the way everyone is beginning to question medieval thoughts, medieval belief systems. And the first question then is, do you have the feminine inside you, even if you're a male?
Right.
Every one of us, once we begin to recognize that, then also there's another dimension to it, that the empowerment of the feminine really means a more compassionate world. A world where we do not take for granted certain structures, and a world where there's maturity of thoughts, maturity in the thinking process. And this is in reality the rise of consciousness. And this rise of consciousness is an idea that has come, that is unstoppable.
So if we're at this point, I think we're at this point again, where the rise of consciousness, as we travel through the procession and all the yugas, I think we're coming into a time period where I think there's a window of opportunity here that we don't want to pass it up, because it feels like in the past we have missed this opportunity for whatever reason. We lack the ability to share ideas or something. But as I see the world right now, it's really in a precarious place. And I sort of like the Einstein quote where he said, we're never going to come up with the solutions to the problems from the same level that created the problems. We need another level of consciousness, awareness, to find the solutions to these problems. And I think that's why I have sort of just gone over to the side of light, instead of getting so caught up in the conspiracy and the darkness of the world, because I don't think we're going to be able to fix that world with this level of consciousness. And the only way I see out is a total awakening of mankind as a planetary consciousness. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look at it this way, whenever there was a master of higher consciousness, definitely it couldn't be handled by the society, starting from Christ. Even at the times of Prophet Muhammad, he was the most conscious being at his time, at his location, and so he became a natural leader.
Right.
But there was a lot of conflicts. But then you trace it, go all the way down to Abraham Lincoln, then come down to Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, all of them were assassinated. But yet, today if Christ was amongst us, we say, wow, he's fantastic. Because to us, what he speaks seems so aligned with the current day thoughts. And as we go along to the next, which is from the perspective of declaration of consciousness, now we are seeing it as it is a birthright. It cannot anymore be said that this is an idea that needs to be looked outside ourselves. It is something that every individual on planet Earth, every human on planet Earth is entitled to. The entitlement to step out of the existing paradigm of limitations set before to enslave a person, enslave their mind. The mind now, whether we like it or not, has been set free and is being set free.
Right.
So we reflect now into the same states of consciousness that each one of us can be the prophet and write our own book, the Quran or the Bible, but follow it exclusively by ourselves and never enforce our belief systems on anyone else.
Yeah, it seems like this is more the message that's coming out of the East now, of masters and gurus and teachers. They're saying, we don't want followers. We want you to be your own leader.
Exactly. And that's consciousness, because the moment we begin to step out of our own mind by way of meditating, we are having the same experience that any prophet had or any realized master had. It is a vortex to be in. The only thing is, can you have that vortex all the time? And that vortex is the state of joy. And to have more of the state of joy, you would set more discipline to attain more of that and be that all the time. And that's when practices like yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, there are a million ways to attain this. It doesn't matter which way, as long as we can come to the place of primal bliss and be the master for ourselves and see that this as consciousness is potent in not only our own realities, but the collective realities of humanity.
You know what's interesting, Nandhi, is I was listening to a person speak, and I didn't know who I was listening to. And he ended up being he was a theoretical physicist. But when I was hearing him talk, at first I thought he was maybe an Eastern master or Eastern guru, because he was talking a lot of from Vedic literature and everything. But one of the things that's happening in science right now is they are beginning to realize that reality as we know it isn't real. It's more like a holographic projection. And it takes me back to a lot of the ancient writings in Vedic literature, the Upanishads. They all talk about this. And this is truly, it seems more like a dream of Brahma than it does the reality that we've been taught in our schools and systems and organizations. And it seems like scientists that are really doing their outer and inner work, this knowledge is bubbling up through them and waking us up to a whole nother level of reality. Even if that reality, the first level, is to realize that we're asleep. But that's the beginning of waking up in a dream.
True. You know what's interesting was that today in Declaration of Consciousness, every day or every second day we post a master. And today's master was Carl Sagan.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Because when you look at Carl Sagan or Albert Einstein, if they were in India, they would have been venerated as the most amazing yogis.
Yeah.
Because all these realized masters, somehow, where there's consciousness, are recognized for what they have to offer. And where rational, scientific inquiry comes is when each one can offer their unique genius of the now. Everyone has a unique genius of the now to offer, and that's very unique to each one.
Right.
But as we climb higher and higher, some can express that genius in the physical realities, as in the form of science, art, all this. And then comes the alignment where they are not persecuted anymore.
Right.
They are respected beings. And this is consciousness, because now we are able to summon the highest wisdom and the highest and the sharpest intellect to resolve anything that comes in as limitations of humanity.
Yeah, and I think this is where it comes in, to get past our bipolar minds of thinking right and wrong, this and that, left and right, because everything that you would have to say, my mind might come in conflict with some of it. But if I see what you're saying is just a different perspective, like if we're looking at this, for instance, you can say you see this, and I can say, well, I see this. But it's the same thing from different perspectives. You know what I mean? Then if I can relax, give up my individual perspective and come around and see through your eyes, it gives a new dimension to my reality as well as yours. And I think we're seeing that from different religions. You know, like one of my favorite sayings is from the Middle East: believe in Allah, but tie up your camel first. You know, and there is so much richness of wisdom in all of these traditions if we can let loose of the conflict of our minds and start seeing this reality that we're all seeing through from different life experiences, different knowledge, different intellect, different upbringings.
See, what you are talking about is when you are the spirit having the human experience, what it necessarily means is you're thinking outside and beyond the mind. And when you begin to step outside the mind, we begin to see the oneness of it all. So when there's a realization, the first realization is, I am everything. I can still remember going back to many, many years back when I had my death experience and came back. They had prepared a special meat dish for me that I used to love. And I see that and I look at that and say, oh my God, that could have been me. That could have been my dog. That could have been a cat. That could have been anything, you know. I mean, so that is the oneness you begin to recognize, and that revolution happens within ourselves.
Right.
And of realization, oh my God, you know, how could I hurt another if I am him, I am her?
Right.
And this consciousness could be provided in many ways. Like on one dimension, you read a book, you are lifted up to a particular place. You see a movie, definitely, yes, it's going to affect you. But one of the most potent and easy ways of conveying this consciousness was through resonance. In a whack, consciousness was able to be transmitted. And when you say resonance, then you go back to the mantra. Then you go back to what was inside the mantra, the song, the dance within the mantra, the state of joy within the mantra that was embedded by all the yogis before that.
Right.
And so when you journey through consciousness by way of understanding within ourselves what it is, as lifting ourselves to several layers and layers and layers of our own conscious state, and then coming to realize the now. In a moment, you know, like all the sages, when they go for years and years and years meditating, they are able to make that potent. So the very presence of a realized master, the very presence of a conscious being is able to ignite the light of everyone around them. And one dimension is resonance. There's so many different dimensions. And today, what's amazing is you go to a bookshop, and you see so many books on being awake, being in the now, everything related to consciousness. And it's not one book or two books. And then you realize this is an idea that has come. And now with the flow of this as consciousness, with the flow of this as in people, as in flow of this as you and me, now what should we do?
Right.
How can we magnify it together? Because when we wake up, our soul is an ordinary soul now wakes up to being the Mahatma, the big soul, the great soul. One Mahatma liberated India. Imagine the power of all of us coming together to
Right.
look into saying, okay, now as conscious beings, what are we here to do?
Yeah, and you know, Nandi, when you say resonance, it brings to my mind the importance of a teacher-pupil relationship. Like, I'm sure you've seen this. You can talk to one person and you can see that they're getting some of what you're saying on an intellectual level, but they're not really getting it at these deeper levels. It seems like what you are, what I am, we are different frequencies. And if my frequency can be high enough to entrain with your frequency, I can start understanding what you're talking about. So it sort of brings out the importance of we all have to do our inner work. You know, this is the believing in all part, but we all have to go out there and into the world and pull in new information and bring that into ourselves, you know?
See, that is one way of looking at it. There's another way of looking at it which was practiced for thousands of years, and that is that when you are beginning to understand that there's a state of joy in you, perhaps by way you can attribute it, like for instance with resonance, with the mantra, then you begin to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper within you as a journey through consciousness, and then you begin to realize there's no more questions to ask. And then when you relate it to how you would perform in the physical realities, you are like the Matrix movie. In other words, yes, there's information, and you would absorb information so fast. Your mind works in a different dimension. You're able to work on several layers simultaneously. So one example of this is Leonardo da Vinci of the past. He had 26 different, he writes his bio for a countess in Turin, and he writes 26 things he's good at, and his art figured 23rd. Now see the layers at which we are talking about. Now
Right.
This is what happens when a person gets conscious. It's like when the moment they start working into the higher conscious mind, every attribute of ourselves as genius begins. And then we utilize outside information from a perspective of like a bee sucking honey from all the possible flowers. But ultimately the honey hive by itself is our daily momentum in creation, and that is from within ourselves.
Yeah, I have a feeling, Nandi, if you and I spent time together, at first we would have a lot to talk about, but I think in a matter of no time, there would be silence.
True. Silence is, but you know what's amazing is, how do you go into stillness within the silence? And that's an amazing thing, because there's a contradiction over here, because there's a dance within the stillness, within the silence. And if you've seen the dance, you're able to sit still.
I'm gonna have to think about that.
Now see, like when, for instance, the resonance, the music that we came out with,
Yeah.
the Arakara, it reflects that.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
I love the first one on here, the dance of the Siddhars. It made me feel like I like music that makes me feel like I'm like on a train or something. It sort of reminds me of some of the trains in India, you know, how it felt like movement. And then with the chanting and the instruments in the background, it sort of moved me on different levels, and I felt myself being woven in and out of intellect and being and physicalness. It was really great. I have to tell you that.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. See, even with this music, for instance, when I came to this country, there was a part in me which did not know how I could actually activate certain visions, for me, my journey through the caves and through solitude led me to wake up on a higher level. And that wake up was to know my purpose. What on earth am I here for? So when I came to this country, I simply did not know how it was all going to happen. And the first step was through meditation, my guru telling me, hey, how you sing to us, sing it to the world. And so when we came into creating the music, it just happened with a flow.
Yeah, I can sort of feel that too when I was listening to this. I know you're sort of pressed for time, but there is one question I'd like to ask before you have to go.
Wonderful, brother.
What can we do? As individuals, I think we feel powerless because all of our institutions take away our power and we give it away. And now we're starting to see a world that's out of control. What do we do as individuals to claim back our divine power and really feel like what we're doing is making a difference?
See, the first dimension is what we are going to do for ourselves. In the sense, how are we going to want to be more in the states of joy, that is bliss, that is consciousness. That is what we are going to do for ourselves. On another dimension is, see, from Nandhi's perspective, what we are doing right now is a global movement called Declaration of Consciousness, and what we are simply wanting to do over here is wake up every human to claim this right while working with the United Nations to have it as an acceptable norm of a civilized society. In our civilized society, we take so many things for granted. Rejection of violence is a very important tenet. Respecting and honoring the feminine. The women are equal, if not more equal than men. And most societies, that's not the case. So all this that we take for granted, if this was endorsed in the United Nations, and if we had nations actually subscribing to it, moving it to their parliament and accepting it, then, like Red Cross, we cannot be banned. Now we can deliver consciousness. How do we deliver consciousness? Every one of us, every conscious being is a master. Let every being deliver consciousness through science, through talks, through videos, through music, through documentaries, through entertainment. That is declaration of consciousness. So, there's a singular intent of all the sages, of all the masters of higher consciousness through all the ages. And that singular intent is for everyone to have a higher state of consciousness. That's why they had disciples in the first place. They wanted to replicate that. Right. So if all of us as conscious beings come together and say enough is enough, the first thing that we would understand in the basic nature of consciousness is we are all abundant beings. In the moment we can resolve and break through any limits and limitations, including that of a government. Look at China. Isn't it time for people to say, hey, what's going on over here? Look at look at the Middle East. Imagine if the woman woke up over there and said, hey, how about us having 4 husbands?
Right.
All this is possible when we all wake up. And what's going to make us wake up is not really as to even our individual effort or even the global effort, but also the time has come. Everyone has begun to question. Everyone has begun to actually have access to information. And that with this we break through. But the next dimension that comes in now is, in this age of consciousness, is the reality itself, that our reality of consciousness itself that enhances consciousness. A conscious movie maker making more conscious movies, conscious music, likewise. Then we talk about science coming into play, affirming the infinity, affirming the fact that there is something beyond, which is very rational, at the same time common sense. And this common sense will crack the egg of ignorance. So this, as we say, is something that is there for each one of us at this age. And each one of us share breath. We are also sharing consciousness. We are sharing the same place where our thoughts are coming from. Sooner or later, leaders of governments, leaders of corporates will come to understand it. And if they do not come to understand it, realities will enable them to understand it, will break things down to understand it. There will be a shift in the reality that we are all experiencing for ourselves now in our own lives.
Right.
This will only be on macro scales. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I see that what we're going through right now, I see a lot of fear in people, but as you rise above the fear, this turns into a pretty amazing journey. It's going to be challenging. I think we're looking at some physically challenging times, but it's all meant to put us against the wall to wake us up, I think, because as we're never going to wake up as a human race if we're totally comfortable, totally satisfied, totally entertained, and everything is laid out for us. We are the kinds of beings that have to get uncomfortable to wake up, I think.
You are so absolutely right. You are so absolutely right. And that's the thing. And, that's the thing. What's going to wake us up? And hopefully the pivotal moment has come. And, consciousness will work its way. And the way it will work its way is through the states of joy that we are ignited with, and with more and more conscious beings coming together. It would be such a natural process, like waking up in the morning and seeing flowers blossom.
Right. Well, Nandhi, I tell you one thing, man. It's really nice to meet you out here on the dance floor of life and playing through this game of Leela that is so amazing. I've been wanting to meet you for a while, and maybe the next time my wife Dara and I come to LA, we'll see if you're around and stop by.
Please do, brother. Please do. It'll be it'll be an honor, and it is such a joy to speak to you. And knowing, we have all come together to make things happen. And in the field of consciousness, everything happens in an instant, exponentially.
Well, Rumi said this is where we're supposed to meet.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
Thank you for your time, Nandhi.
Thank you, brother.